Houston, do you copy? Houston, come in. This is Dr. Emma Fisher on board Observation Horizon R. Please respond.
Observation is a game about, you guessed it, observing. You play as an AI called Sam, which is short for Systems, Administration, and making this acronym into a fun little name. Sam's job is to help the astronauts aboard the International Space Station 2 Electric Boogaloo, and their job to do something. Look, I don't know, and frankly, they don't either. It doesn't matter because this is a spooky thriller, and obviously everything goes wrong. You already know this, because of course it does.
What's going on, Sam? What is that noise? Sam, what is that? Sam, respond! What the hell is going on?
There are 6 souls on the station, but only 2 of them really matter, while the rest get relegated off to die for the sake of our best buddy Emma to react to. Well, almost all of them. The game starts with a pretty atmospheric scene where the lights are out. Spooky and urgent music starts playing, and the light from the window is playing impressive tricks due to the station rotating uncontrollably. In moments like these, the game is at its best, flexing its sense of atmosphere and utilizing its ominous soundtrack to build tension and suspense. But then, the gameplay begins, and the first strange design decisions start to show up. Emma Fisher, one of the astronauts and our best friend, tries to voice activate Sam. But even in the distant year of 2026, voice controls still suck, and the game tells you not to accept her request. Well, it doesn't directly tell you, but it does feel right to act like a robot when you're a robot. She gets rightfully frustrated and tries again, and it tells you to accept, and you're on your way. The problem here is that if you accept her on the first try, she's like, cool, whatever, and moves on with her life. But also, if you say no too many times, she just overrides you and gets on with the story anyway. It gives you a choice, but not really, because nothing you choose really impacts the game in any way. There's another time, later, when you're dealing with another character and the exact same sequence happens. He tries to voice authenticate with Sam, you say no, he does it again, and if you say no, he just overrides you. These faux decisions make it seem like you have agency over what happens, but besides a few disgruntled voice lines over your inability or unwillingness to cooperate, everything stays the same. After tormenting Emma with your selective hearing, we move to my next gripe with this game. Well, after some spooky nonsense, but we don't have time for that. You have to check out those sick new solid states you had installed for all that research, only to find they're all dead and you've forgotten everything. Yay! The game has a framing device wherein the player character can now not know anything and it makes sense. This means you have to find out where things are, upload map data, and generally comb every inch of the room you're currently in to progress. This is another thing that really sucked the fun out of this for me. And listen, maybe I'm completely unaware of my surroundings and this game is just too hard for my little peanut to process. But I spend most of the game slowly looking around every room, zooming in on every little object, hoping to God that it was whatever gizmo I needed to complete the next objective, or the one bit of slightly darker space station wall in a sea of never-ending blackness. I won't lie, at certain points, which are too many for me to admit, I caved and looked up how to solve some particularly obtuse and mind-numbing sections of the game. Shout out to IGN, by the way, for that one. I really love how you sectioned off each few moments of the game into separate videos with unskippable ads that took longer than the time I spent watching the actual gameplay. The point is that too often, especially near the end of the game, it felt that the story was being padded out by these objects you had to find, while flying around in the galaxy's most unwieldy Halo monitor, or while peeping with the slowest moving security cameras I've ever seen. A quick aside, is this the quality of camera on a modern space station? I could be wrong, they were built a long time ago, but it seems like the devices monitoring the people literally in space shouldn't be spitting out its footage on VCR tapes. Whatever. It's spooky when technology doesn't work, right? Or something? I don't know. You end up helping Emma out of a module she's trapped in, and we get to see the character models. At first glance, they don't look that bad, but then you notice how Emma's eyes stare coldly through you and how her mouth refuses to stay closed, like she's afraid that if she does, it'll stay that way forever. They aren't the worst models, and sometimes when dramatic moments are happening and the faces aren't in view or they're farther away, everything can look really nice. But when Emma insists on getting as close to the camera as possible, like a college kid who's really intent on looking engaged in their online classes, it's sort of hard to look past. Up next, Emma shoves you into a personality core prototype and you get to experience your main mode of transportation for the first time, awkwardly floating around while trying not to bump into everything on this cramped little space station. The movement in this is not fun. In fact, it's a chore. Sam moves very slowly, and it's easy to get turned around or flip the wrong way over. And you have to keep turning and reorienting yourself because you're in a freaking space station with tubes and hallways leading off in every direction. I played this on PC, and I could never find a nice sensitivity, so it always felt like I was over or under correcting during movement, throwing me off more. And don't get me started on the vents. I found myself giving up on trying to carefully navigate them and just slid my robotic face against the wall until I got spit out on the other side. After some flying lessons, you get tasked with repairing the magnetic field around the experimental fusion reactor one of the crew was working on, and I had too much trouble with this. I failed to notice what the circle in the middle was there for. Was that the core and the wavy rave lines needed to be in a ring around it? Was the circle the magnetic field and the wavy rave lines need to be inside of it? No, the wavy rave lines need to be smoothed out and follow the outer border of the yellow circle, of course. I could have paid more attention and see the safe indicator when one of the 6 interfaces was correctly fiddled with, but I didn't. And I don't think that it's entirely my fault. Some of the puzzles in this game barely give you any instruction before thrusting a new, used only once minigame in your cold, robotic face. And this one, this so-called puzzle, where multiple times in the game the player is forced to monotonously comb through this uninspired Jackson Pollock ripoff and find the little black dot that corresponds with whatever location you need, with no hints or direction? Just move your cursor around until you stumble upon it. Ugh. They're not all bad, but I can't say any of them were fun either. And one time, they really sucked the urgency right out of the game. Later on, spoilers by the way, you've gone full Hal and you have to suffocate one of the crew. He stands there, pleading with Sam to spare him, while you vacate the room of any oxygen. But you have to slowly close and lock every door like it's a discount local freaking haunted house. And instead of the crew member, I don't know, leaving through one of the other doors, he just stands there idling, out of mercies to beg, and waits for the part in the script where he's supposed to die. And that's about everything I really dislike about Observation. I mean, there's a few more minor annoyances, some rare crashes, the lack of a normal save function, relying on autosaves after each act's big reveal, and the strange tonal shifts in some dialogue. For example, sometimes Emma will be anguishing over the loss of one of her co-workers, and not a second later, give Sam the command to go open a door or pop a friggin' Hot Pocket in the oven like nothing just happened. Don't get me wrong, there's parts I really like about this game. I thought it set the tone and mood extremely well, especially in the beginning with an excellent soundtrack and cinematic stylings. I felt genuinely unnerved at many points during the story. That's not too hard for me though, as I find any kind of single-player experience where I don't have a scrappy companion riding my ass and blurting out witty one-liners terrifying. Still, I thought it was an acceptable story, and the plot seemed okay. I'm not sure I love the ending, or if I even fully understood it, but it worked. Maybe there's even sequel material there where you play as the Emma-Sam hybrid. You could assume the identity of a real estate agent turned candidate for Lord Empress of the World and push Earth closer to Saturn with the promises of better property values. I could have seen Observation as a great short film, but making it a game means giving the player a reason to want to play the game, and not just because it's in the way of the next scare. Somehow, if you haven't played the game yet and still want to watch it play out even though I just spoiled the ending with zero build-up or context, I'd suggest observing someone else play it, just for the story alone.